Hello again, everyone. Here is the drum leaf tutorial where you're now going to put the book together. So we're going to take the book and you're going to put the boards on each side. You're going to have all the folded edges together. And then you're going to have another board. So you're going to jog all that together. The spine is flat in the back. And then you're going to take these binder clips and you want to put them down maybe about an inch down from the edge, because you don't want to pinch it right at the corner, and we're going to need that edge. And I'm actually going to, you can keep jogging it because you really do want everything back, and then put the other clip on the other end. And then make sure, it's a little bit curved, so it's a little bulgy in the middle, but when we're going to put on some glue and we're going to put on our Japanese paper. So when we put that on, we can take the clips off, and I'm going to show you. So before I put any glue on, I'm going to go ahead and prep this piece of Japanese paper. So I've got a little strip here, and what I want to do is I'm going to cut it to the height of the boards, and I'm going to cut that to the width of that spine. So I'm going to clean up an edge here because it's a little bit raggedy. So I'm going to square off an edge. So I'm actually just going to trim out the triangle shape. I'm not even going to worry about it being all the way across, because this is a piece that I'm going to reuse for other things. So I'm just going to cut a piece off of this. So now I've got a straight edge, and it's still not completely straight up at the end, but that's okay because I know the book is shorter than that. So I'm going to lay my Japanese paper on top, and I'm going to make a tick mark at the width of that spine. So on either side of the board. And here I could definitely see through it, and I can even just kind of push down where the edge is and make another tick mark. And that's going to be the width of that little strip. Okay, and then so the height's not cut yet, I'm just cutting the width. And I'm going to go ahead and put my blade in the first and then line up on the second. And I'm going to cut that strip. And even though it's got a little rough end, that's fine because I know it's going to fit the height. And then so this can get out of my way. And then I can take the height of this and just use it to cut. Actually, since the binder clips are on there, I'm actually going to just lay this on top. Lay the little strip on top and then make a tick mark where it meets the top. And I'm actually going to mark right under that. I'm not even folding it over. It's like a little bit down from the top of the book. And that's where I'm going to cut it. And then to make sure it's square, use my square or the triangle to square that up. And again, I can actually see the mark. I'm not covering it up. So I'm making sure that it's going to fit correctly. Like that. Okay, so that's ready to go. And then the next piece I'm going to go ahead and prep is the cambric. That's already the right height. So the cambric is going to be a ½ inch shorter on each end, so an inch shorter than the height of the book. That's how tall the cambric is going to be. And then I just need it to wrap around the book and maybe come down like a ½ inch to 3/4 on each side. So I'm just like putting this on. So it's wrapped over that much on this side. And then I'm just going to make a tick mark where I'm going to cut it, just so I know I've got enough. And it's like that, and which is about, if I check on my mat, it's about 2 inches, maybe a little less. So you could just go ahead and cut 2 inches, or you can cut on this mark. And you want that to be, it's pretty square, the pieces I gave you, so it's not that important that it be perfectly square, but So I've still got another piece left. This is my material. This is for the spine. This is going to go on next, and then I think that's it. We don't need to prep anymore because we're going to make the spine piece after we put these two materials on. Okay. So I'm just double checking. I want to make sure that I'm gluing the right side. So this is the edge that has the the edges of the paper, and this is the edge that I'm going to glue. It's slightly wider. So I'm going to get my glue. Oh, I need my cup of water, but I'm going to skip that for now. So the materials I'm going to move out of the way. I'm going to keep my Bristol because I still haven't used that part, but I'm going to set those to the side. Keep the Bristol out. And then I just want to glue up. I'm going to glue the spine. I'm just going to put glue on like that. So dip into the glue, and I'm going to glue this up. And I do want it to kind of go down in there. I mean, it's pretty tight, so you can't get a whole lot of glue down into the grooves. But, and you see how flat that is. You really want to keep it. So you're almost brushing. It feels like a flat surface. You can barely feel a little bump on there. And then you're going to take your Japanese paper and you're just going to lay it on the spine like that. So it really fits right on top of that spine. And if it sticks out, like it's kind of overhanging, so I'm just going to snip that off. I mean, it's barely doing it, but I just, instead of, I don't want it to show on top of the book. Oh, I just remembered a step. Guys, I do it every year. We want to be able to cover the corners. It's not something that we can't fix. We can do it, but I'm going to have to wait for it to dry. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to let that sit there for a second while I show you what I'm talking about here. So on this book, and I forget this step all the time, it's just easier if you do it ahead of time. We're going to cover these corners. You can see, and if I don't do this step, you'll see bare board right here. And I don't think I have an example of that because I almost always do it. And it's still doable, but you know, we're gluing the boards on right now. So I'm going to glue the cambric on next underneath. I mean, this is the finished book. And then we will put those corners on. So you actually need another little bit of book cloth for this step, or you can use your paste paper. So let me go ahead and show you the cambric. Sorry, I mean, but I've done this a million times where I skip this step. Oh, what was I? Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought now. I'm going to put a little bit more glue on this so it goes down in there. I want to work that cloth down a little bit. And sometimes I'll take my bone folder to make sure that that's getting down in there. Okay. So you kind of can't see it anymore, but the paper's still on there. And then we're going to glue out this strip. So you need your trash paper or your scrap paper again. I'll move this out of the way and the book cloth out of the way. We're going to glue out the cambric, and it's going to go onto the spine. So this is going to get completely glued, and this is going to get wrapped over the back. This is really what's going to hold this book together, is the cambric. So I'm going to glue that out. This is not book cloth. This is cambric. It's just cloth. It's like a starched cloth. I mean, I guess it's kind of starch. It's pretty stiff. Whoops. But it doesn't have a paper lining on it. Okay, and then I'm going to lay this on. So you want to center that head and tail, and you want to center it kind of back and forth horizontally as well. You can sort of see through what, you know, where it is. It's centered. And then you're going to work that down evenly. So I'm kind of taking my thumbs and I can feel the edges, and I'm just kind of pushing those down first. Then I'm just squeezing, and I'm still coming back before I push those completely flat. Do that. And do this. Okay. And then you can take your bone folder. Bone fold. Bone fold. Okay, and then it's best if we let this dry for a few minutes, especially because we have to do this book cloth step. So I have enough book cloth that I can just cut off like a little strip right like this, because you need 4 little 1-inch squares. So let me just prep that real quick while you're still on, because I'm going to stop the video to let that dry for a few minutes before I do this next step. But I'm going to go ahead and cut. I'm actually going to cut like a little less than that, just so I make sure I have enough book cloth. So I'm going to cut this little strip off, and then I'm going to cut. So the grain on this is running long. So the grain is running like this. And I actually want to put these on so that they're easy to fold. So they're going to wrap over the corner of the book like that direction. So I'm going to just cut little pieces. I mean, you don't even really need an inch. And they are going to get covered up. I'm going to go ahead and cut an inch because it's just easier. I can follow this line. So I'm just going to cut these into little chunks. And when I show you this step, you'll understand why it's easier to do beforehand. But you are now officially a member of the Book Arts class because I do it. I mess up. I don't do this in order every year. So welcome to Book Arts, guys. So yeah, this is what I'm going to show you. We'll let this dry, stay clipped, and then come back and do that part. Okay. All right. Pause. All right, so I took the binder clips off. It's dry enough. It's really not as dry as you might want it for the demo. But okay, so what we're going to do is glue these up, and we're going to put them on the corner. So this is the problem: is you don't want to have to open this while it's still damp. But we're going to glue it on here like this, and wrap it over the top like that. And it just has to, it's really about covering the very top of the board so that you can't see bare board. So you can see how if the board was not attached, it would be easier if those pieces were just on there, and you could just kind of freely do this, cover them, and then do the steps that we just did where we, those pieces would already be on there, and then you glue on the spine and you do all that. And, I don't know if other people do this structure this way, but I like to cover that board. I've seen people use like black matte board, and that looks nice. Or, some other color that they could see, you could see through there. I've really only ever seen black, I think. But, I used to make them with just bare board, but then I started thinking, I don't like that. It looks unfinished. So this step. Okay, so first one. I got my water back out so I could not have a dried out glue brush. And I'm just going to wring that out, and then I'm going to just glue these up one at a time. So I don't want a lot of glue because I don't want glue squeezing out. So I'm just barely brushing glue on. Oops. Let that sit there for a minute. Okay, and then I'm going to set that away while I do this part, and then I'm going to open up to the back. I'm just going to really pull it open so I can get it in there. And then wrap over the top. And then I can close the book once I've got it down and then work out here. And I just want to make sure it's down really tight. But this is why I don't want a lot of glue, because I actually have to work, to make it look finished and flat. And then I can go back in and push that down. So you can see how much easier that would be if you do it before. So if you're following along with this and you're doing it for the first time, if you want to make another book, you could do that in advance. And that's what I would suggest. I think probably in the last 10 years, I've done it twice. Done it in advance twice. And I was really happy, but most of the time I forget. So I'll do this one. I'm going to go ahead and just do this on camera. Or maybe I'll just do this one side and then I'll stop it and do the other side. That's what I'll do, is I'll just do these two. So again, so I don't really like having to open the book like that. And I'm just trying to make sure that the book cloth is not poking back too far, because that's actually will be a problem when we put the spine on. So, you know, that's what makes it trickier to do it this way, but it's definitely doable. See some dry glue on there. And if it overlaps a little on the inside, I'm not so worried about it. Up against the spine, I can see it, but I think that's okay. Right here, I don't want that. And even if it does, I could just kind of knock the corner a little bit. But you really want it right up to it. Okay, so that's how it is, like this. And you're gonna cover both corners. I'll show you the outside and then the inside again. And then I'm gonna stop the recording just so you can do the other two, okay? And then I'll come back. Okay, so both sides are done with that. Looks like this. So all the corners are covered. Now we're gonna make the spine piece or the spine of the book. So scrap paper away. Oops. So now I want to make a spine piece that's going to get glued to this, and it's a little different than we've done before. So don't get ahead with that. So what we want to do is measure this space, and then we're going to transfer it to the Bristol. So you need a little scrap piece of paper, and just tear off a strip of paper, and then going to measure with that. So you're going to put this across the spine, and you actually do want to measure here because you want that, that's how wide it's going to be. However, okay, so we're going to make that width, and I'm actually just, you know, the pencil and kind of rubbing the edges of that. So there's my width, and that's what I'm going to transfer to the Bristol, but there's a little bit of a caveat here. So I'm going to transfer that to the Bristol, and you can see I'm doing it in a direction that's correct. Now, I actually want to make it a little bit skinnier because when we put this onto the bookmark, you know, when you're going to put it back here, what tends to happen is if you don't cut it thin enough, the thickness of the book cloth makes it too wide, and I mean, it's okay. I mean, that one's not even completely flat. That's pretty good. But what can happen is it gets kind of pie shaped, and you don't want to have that. It doesn't look nice. So to do that, we want to cut this a little narrower than what we just made the tick marks for. So I'm going to put my ruler inside those marks. Like I can see the complete mark. And that's what I want. And that's where I'm going to cut. Okay. And then I'm actually going to check it. So I'm going to hold it back here. And what I want to be able to feel, see, that's too wide. I can feel, this is by feel. I want my finger to kind of go in right there. So I'm actually going to cut this a little bit smaller. It looks like exactly the right size, but I know this book cloth, if I had maybe a thinner book cloth, I might go with this, but you know, this is just a regular book cloth. This is probably what you guys have, is something very similar to this. And I'm just like, I don't believe that this is narrow enough. So I'm going to shave off just a little bit more. So, you know, come in on that measurement when you're doing this. So, I mean, I don't even think you guys can probably see what I'm cutting off, but it is a hair. I'm just cutting a little bit more. Only thing with doing that is you tend to pull away from the blade. I mean, from the edge. And it's hard not to push the spine. Ugh, kind of messy. I gotta straighten that out. You gotta hold this down really tight because it wants to pop out, or it wants to slide under. Yeah, that's better. So when you take that measurement, I might even suggest that you come in a little bit with your tick marks. That might be a better way to kind of estimate, but it is tricky. You know, the first one, if it's too wide, you know, shh, don't tell anybody. They won't know, but we know. We don't want it like that. So then I'm going to cut the height of this piece. So now this is the correct width. And I can just feel like when my fingers are on that, I can just feel inside that it's sitting inside that width. This is just from experience. And now I'm going to take my book and I'm just going to set it on top and I'm going to cut my spine exactly to that height. So I'm just going to hold down real tight and cut. Just takes a couple of cuts and then cut across the bottom. I'm just pushing against the board and then I've got my height. Okay, so that's my spine piece that I need. So the book cloth just needs to be, this is too tall. This just needs to be like 1.5 inches taller than the book at most. And so if this is 5.5, that just needs to be 7. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna cut that to 7. And you guys are gonna do this too. When you're cutting your book cloth, you're just gonna use your tools to cut. I didn't demonstrate that, but I showed the other pieces, you know, cutting the book pages. And so you're gonna do the same thing. You're just gonna use your ruler, your triangle to cut these pieces. So you can see this is not even, but that's okay because we're gonna trim it up even after I glue the spine piece down. So I'm gonna glue up the Bristol, I'm gonna lay it in the center here, and then we're gonna turn over head and tail, and then we're gonna trim. So I'm gonna set my book over to the side so I have space, kind of clean up some of my scraps here, get them out of the way. And then I'm gonna take my newsprint or just my extra paper, and I'm gonna glue this spine piece. So I'm just gonna glue that. So I'm gonna need this again in a second. And then I'm gonna glue this in the center here. It's relatively centered. And bone fold it. And then I want to turn over the head and tail. So I'm actually just building a little spine piece here. And I'm going to glue here. Glue the first edge. Again, set this out of my way so I can work. And then I want to fold that over and glue it down. So just be careful that you're not pushing in right here. Just fold straight down. And then take your bone folder and work it up against where the Bristol is, under the book cloth, and out. If you see any glue come squirt out, you know, wipe off your bone folder before. Get out here and get some glue, wipe it. Okay, and then we do the other end. That. Same thing. Put that out of the way. Pull this up. There's dried glue on my hands, but that's fine. Little pieces that might be rolled up on your fingers, no big deal, because that'll come off. And that's it. Okay, so that's your spine piece. And you can see it's uneven, and this is where we're going to trim that out. So I might not let this dry though. I'm gonna let this dry for a few minutes just because I can still see wet glue and I don't like cutting things when it's super wet. So I'm gonna give that just a few minutes to dry and then I'll come back to this. Okay, so we're back after a few minutes of drying. And now we're gonna trim this out even on each side. So for you guys, I think the best way to do that is just gonna be to measure. If you have something that you know is 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch wide, I mean, this would actually work. So I could push this up against the side, up against the Bristol and trim it to that width. But you really want it to be long enough. And I have these brass tools. I'm just going to show you this. This is not something you're probably going to have, but like this is what I use a lot to do this. We have in the studio, we have plexiglass ones. But that's a nice thing to do if you have that, which it's unlikely that you do. But in the future, you want to pursue this further, you might want to invest in this. And this is something that you can get at a hardware store. They have these pieces. I forget what they're called. Flat. I forget the name, but maybe I can figure it out some other time. But anyway, this is a nice thing to have if you could have that. But it really, anything metal that is a certain size you could use. But what we're going to do is just measure. So that's 3/4 of an inch, and I'm just going to measure that. And I have this little ruler that goes right up to the edge. If you don't have that, if your ruler starts down, a lot of them do, you just measure from that first mark. Oops, this is my pencil. And then 3/4. Make a tick mark, just like we do with other things. No big deal. A couple of tick marks. And then again, I'm going to put my blade in the first mark, line up the second one, and then cut. Oh my gosh, I slid. I messed up. You know what? I'm just going to, this is fun. I made a miscut. And so I think my ruler, see, that's why I use the knot. I talked about that in the other video about how I use the back sometimes, because the cork holds it up, and it spun around as I was cutting and I didn't realize. So, okay, this is what happens. So I'm going to measure this distance, the narrowest point, and just make it all that. So I think that's about 1/2 inch. And I'm just gonna, yep, it's like exactly 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna tip mark there because it's just a little bit wider there, and then I'm just gonna do that. It's a little narrower than I would usually like, but because this is what's happening, this is what I'm gonna do. And 1/2 inch on this side. This is the side I had cut with that tool. So, oh well. 1/2 inch on that side. Okay, let's try this again. And no, I have to use, because I don't want to, here's the thing is I don't want to try to like not hold the material down under it. So I have to do on top. I'm just going to be more careful about holding it in place and making sure. So I am using the back of the ruler, which I prefer anyway, and I'm going to push down harder. Make sure it's not sliding because I got too cavalier there. Okay, so there's that one. And then again, put your blade. I must have pulled it. Who knows what I did. Then hold that. And that, okay? All right, so it's a little skinnier than I would like, but that's okay. Can still use it, okay? All right, so now we've got to prep the book for putting the spine piece on. So first I gotta bend this spine piece. So I'm just folding to the Bristol and like folding it down, and I'll take my bone folder, press this down, do the other side, and make sure that it fits. I want to check it. So this is my spine, and I'm just going to hold it in place to see. Yeah, and you can see, I mean, it's all right, but look, it's a little wide. Even that one that I tested, made sure. I think when I actually glue that down, it's going to be right. But just putting it on here right now, it's like, oh my gosh, it's too wide, but I think it's not. I think it's just that the cloth's being held out a little bit, but when I push up against the Bristol, it's actually right. So it's correct. So, but I'm telling you, it's just not that easy to get that spine piece exact. And that's really what you want because it makes it look clean. Okay, so I did that, and now I've got to draw. What we've got to do when we make this book is you want to have a joint. We got to create a joint by not gluing an edge. So you can see when you open this, that this book, that the spine pops away and it's able to be opened flat, pretty flat. And that's what we want. We want it to release. So to do that, we have to actually glue this spine piece onto the book, but we want to leave a little bit of a joint here. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to measure 1/8 of an inch down from the spine. So we're going to come in about 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to go outside that just a tiny bit. Often I just eyeball this, but 1/8 of an inch seems a little skinny for that. So I'm going to come outside that tick mark, outside the measurement on the ruler with my tick mark. And then I'm going to draw a line right where that is. And I'm not going to draw onto the book cloth where the little covering pieces are. I'm just drawing right here because what I'm doing right now is I'm going to measure out where I'm going to glue. And because my piece is so skinny, I've got a little bit of a problem because I don't have a lot of material to glue down. So I'm going to hold my spine piece on, and I'm making sure that it's flush against the spine. And then out here, I just want to make a little tick mark, actually a pretty long one. So that strip right here is where I'm going to glue. So I don't have a lot of space. You guys are probably not trim. I don't want you to trim it that small because this is hard to do. So make it like 3/4 like I had at least, or 1 inch or something, like more like this piece. Okay, when you cut it, because it's going to allow you a little bit more space. So now I have to glue like this little area. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And then you're going to do it on the other side as well, but I'll probably just demo this side and then you can see the other. Okay, so I measured in that little 1/8 of an inch. Now this I have to glue all the way down. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. Yeah. Okay. But you're going to glue all the way down. And if I go over a little bit, that's okay. I just don't want to go too crazy with it because I'll get glue on my fingers when I'm pushing this on. So this is another place where that flat brush is really helpful. And I'm gluing right to that line and maybe a tiny bit over it, tiny bit beyond, just to make sure that gets glued down tight. But I'm trying to make sure I don't get glue above the line at the spine. But if you do, let me show you. So like if you go, oops, and you go over the line a little bit, you can just take your thumb, and you don't have to have a nail, but you can just wipe right down that line, just enough to where it's just not going to stick. So hopefully you can see that glue on there. It's just like a little strip. And then you're going to take your spine piece and you're going to push it against the spine. You want to make it centered head and tail. I want to make sure it's very flat back here. And then I'm pushing with my thumbs to glue that down. And I can feel glue get on my finger. So I'll just kind of, I'm pushing down like that away from the book cloth. Down, down. But I'm making sure that the spine is very flat at the same time. And once I've got it, I can use my bone folder and really work it down pretty hard. Don't go too crazy with a regular bone folder because you'll scuff it. So make sure it's sticking. Put a little bit of glue on it. Okay. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. So you're going to draw that 1/8 of an inch line and you're going to show, you know, mark out your edge here. So you're going to draw that. I'm not going to do it because I just showed it. You can rewind it and watch it again if you need to. And then I'm going to glue that down just like I did the other side. I'll just glue, 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 and then it'll be on there. So I'm going to pause the video so I can do that part. So as I was doing this second part, I realized I might have been out of frame. So I'm going to show this one more time. So I drew that line. I'm on the second side now. I already glued down that first one. And I drew my line and now I'm just gluing that little strip like that. Now I think, yeah, I'm in frame. I might not have been in frame. So just want to show that one more time. Okay, so that's glued, and then I can work this down. You could probably see this part, but I might have been out of frame a little bit over here. I need a camera crew. Yeah, that's gonna happen. All right, so then I'm gonna work this down again, just white, because I did get a little glue on the other side. That's not straight. Just do the best you can with all these projects at this point, because I can't check it, you know, I can just look at what you do and just do your best. And then if you're still around next semester, if you don't graduate in the spring, come by, you know, and show me your book, and could talk about it when things get back to normal. Okay, so that's what you want right there. And then the next step we're going to do is we're going to attach. So this is sort of a drummed on spine. I'm going to talk about how to attach the pages. So right now the pages are only attached by a thin strip of glue, and the cambric is holding it, okay? But think about that. It's just those folded edges are kind of glued up against that Japanese paper. We need to like restrict the book a little bit. So it's tempting to just leave these pages like this, but the thing is they'll fall out. Yeah, it's just really rare that they won't fall out. And so to avoid that, you know how I showed you earlier that these are attached, you know, so these look a little stiff, and it is called a stiff leaf or a drum leaf binding. So you have a panel like this, a folio, so that they are attached up here. They are double stick taped at the foredge. And that's what you need to do, because that restriction helps hold the book together. And it's like they're attached here, they're attached to the book, they're attached to each other. And then they're glued in the back as well. So you just want to make sure you do this step, because if you don't, your book's going to fall apart more than likely. So we're not there yet, but I just wanted to preempt it, because it kind of looks almost done, but it's not. We've still got a couple steps to do, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm gonna let this dry off camera, and then I'll come back. I'm gonna let this dry for like 5 minutes, and then I'll come back and attach the covers. And you can see that's way too tall. Again, this needs to be just 1.5 inches taller. So it needs to be, this is 5.5, so this is gonna be 7. I'll trim that down. And the width of this needs to be the width of the boards. Okay, so I'm gonna stop and come back. All right, so we've got to attach the paste paper covers now. And this is a drum leaf binding, so we're going to drum this on, meaning that we are only going to attach it here and at the foredges where we turn it over. And so you'll see what I'm talking about here. So first of all, I need to trim this piece to 7 inches. So I'm going to just put it on my mat. And this edge looks straighter, so I'm going to do it from this edge. And I'm just cutting it to 7. I do want a straight, clean edge, and that's what I'm going to use. I really could use either edge here, so I'm not too worried about that. And so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Square it up. Although it doesn't have to be perfectly square, so don't worry too much about that. I'm going to go ahead and prep my other piece too while I'm at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And trim. Just 1.5 inches taller than the boards. Okay. And then the width is the width of the board. So I'm going to glue one edge. And I want to do this one, I think, because I like that edge. So I'm going to glue that just like 1/4 inch. So get out my little scrap. And I'm going to glue this edge, but it's just a tiny bit. So I'll have to put my brush back in the water. So I'll just squeeze it out again. I really do want to get that water out though, because I'm doing kind of some delicate gluing. I don't want it dripping, and I don't want my paper to get wet. So I'm just going to glue like a 1/4 inch in, and I'm not being very exact about this. If you feel like you're like a super sloppy gluer, which honestly I've never noticed anybody being that way, so don't worry too much about it. But if you needed to, you could mask that with just another piece of paper, but it's not that precise, so I wouldn't worry about it. If you do 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, something like that, you'll be fine. Then I just move this. This is more the thing. Get that newsprint out of your way. And then again, we're going to overlap the book cloth like we did with the tunnel book. And here I might try to overlap it just a little more. Like we only did like a 1/16. I might do like an 1/8 here, because that's the only place it's going to be glued. It's on the book cloth. I mean, because we glued like out to here, so it'll glue there too. But I don't want anything to be tight glued. It's not like I'm going to bone fold the heck out of that. I'm just going to really just use my fingers. Okay, so then you can see, and mine's not sticking out quite as far because I had such a skinny piece of cloth. So here, this is where I'm going to do my little mitering, and I want to completely lift the book. And then I'm going to miter and glue. First, I'm going to miter, then I'm going to use my piece of scrap paper to glue. So here it's the same thing. But we're only gluing this. We're not gluing the piece completely down. So I just did that little dimpling, that little push, and then I'm going to cut outside that mark. This is where you really do need to use the X-Acto. And then I can do this edge too. Just fold it up like that. Wherever the dimple is, cut outside of that just a little bit, just so I have enough material to cover. And then I'm going to do the head and tail. So I'm going to do them one at a time, because I can see I had glue. Like, this is just picky little gluing, rules that I make. So I'm going to glue this side. And if a little bit gets under the board, that's not a bad thing. So I am hitting the edge of the board. Try to be a little neat when I get down at the end there, because I don't want a lot of glue to get onto this part of the book. So I can do that little trick of using the tabletop and then pick it up and just push it down. And it's not really getting glued out here. It's only getting glued inside. Okay. And then I'm going to do this end, just using that same piece of paper, and just, there's no glue down here, it's only here. Oop. Slinging glue. Get it out of the way while I do this next step. And use the top. And that's really just to break the fold and get it to fold over and make sure it's flat to the board there. And so this is why you want to make sure that's dry before you start doing this part, or at least drier than just being glued before. Make sure that spine is dry before you do this part. Half hour is good. I mean, I waited like 10 minutes, because I, want to get this done. So I did the little pinch, the little tucking of the corner, like you guys do on the corners when you are covering. And then I'm going to glue the foredge, and that's, so you do tail, head, foredge, THE, tail, head, edge. And again, it's like I'm kind of holding the book back as I do it. It's a little tricky, not too bad. You can see like a 1/2 inch is, you'd need to cut a wider piece of covering paper if you have less than a 1/2 inch of the book cloth showing, because you can see that that's a turn in and it's there, but it's, but the paste down is going to go down right here. It's not going to get pasted, but it's going to get taped down right there. So it's no problem, but you know, it's a little close. Here is a time where I have found that I like to put a piece of wax paper, because there is moisture there and it can tend to ripple your paper. So just while you're doing the other side, you might want to do this. So I'm not going to demo the other side because, again, you can just rewind and watch that again. So you glue that edge, glue it down tight here, and then flip it over, do your mitering, and then do your turn-ins. Okay, so I'll do the other side and then come back. Okay, so your paste paper's on. And now you've got to do the step I was talking about earlier where you're going to attach the tape. So you're going to put double stick tape. You want to start with the first section. So this is your double stick tape, and you guys have done this before. So it's a little tricky because you have to hold the book open like that. My husband's doing something in the kitchen. But you're gonna put this double stick tape down like that. That's on the outer, this is on the paste down on the edge, okay? So you do need to keep up with what you're doing. You wanna make sure that you're putting it in the right spot, okay? So if you start from the front and you just go through, you know that you're not gonna put it here because this is where there's a fold. So there's gonna be another piece here. And so sometimes I'll start putting my bone folder in at the place where I need to put the next piece. Okay, so I'm just gonna double check. So this is a fold. This is an attachment, and you can kind of see it doesn't want to open all the way there. So this is where I'm gonna put a piece of tape. And if you forget what you've done, just go back and look as you do it to make sure that you're doing it at the, and so I'm just laying this at the foredge. And again, this is one of those times you really don't want to go above, whoops, careful that you don't cut the pages. You don't want to go above or below the head and or the tail because it'll get very messy if you do that. So you attach here. This is a fold, so you can open it all the way and see that that's a folded piece. So then I'm going to put a piece of tape on the next one here. So I put my little bookmark in there, and then I'm going to put a piece of tape. And you're going to go through the whole book and do this all the way to that back panel. So if you do, so like I just did, you overlap the top. That's actually the easier one to put in the wrong spot. Just kind of do what I was showing on the tunnel book. Go back, kind of pull it back and clip that down. Okay, so then one more. So this is a fold. Next page is going to be a piece of tape. So you can also do this with glue. This is just an easier and a drier way, clearly, to do this attachment. And I'm sure there's people out there that know a different way to do it, and it probably looks nicer, but for us, this is what I do. Because otherwise, if you get this wet and gluey, you're going to have to let it dry or it will ripple. So if you're doing glue, you have to put blotter paper between wax paper, and you have to change that out as it dries, and you have to keep weight on it. So I don't teach that for that reason. It's just, you know, for students, it's not a great way, but it is more refined. Okay, so this is another fold. And you can just double check. It kind of doesn't look like it, but it is. It's a fold. And then here, when I open to it, you can see that it's like, there's a line there. It's hard to see on the camera, I'm sure, but I can't even barely see it. But this is a fold. And so this is going to be my attachment. It kind of is resistant when I try to open that part because there is glue back there at the spine. So this is what you're going to do. Just go through the whole book and put these pieces of tape down. Don't pull it, you know, lay it down flat and then trim it at the end. And this, I almost overlapped right there. So if that starts to happen, just do that little snip that I showed you before and go and, you know, put another piece on. Because you can always, you know, you don't have to pull that single strip if you can't do that. Or if you mess up, you know, just stop where you are overlapping and clip it and then put another piece down. Okay, so I'm not going to show the whole book of doing that because it takes a few minutes, but just understand that's what you need to do. Is every other, you know, open, that's a line, fold, line, fold, line, fold, line, okay? So that's how I'm going to do it, and I'm going to continue doing it, and then I'll show you how to peel them and attach them. That's pretty easy. So I'm going to stop. Okay, so this very last one, I've got the tape all in there. And then this very last one, make sure you put one back there as well. So you kind of have to rotate the book around because this has to get pasted down or taped down. So do that last one and then snip it. And so then what you want to do, and you can see I kind of just pushed everything down. And then what you want to do is just page by page, peel them. And then, so for like this one, you're just going to close the book on it. So you don't really have to work that hard to do this. You just want to peel it, drop the book down. Same thing throughout. So we just turn to it, find it. So I'm not opening the book wide. I'm just kind of letting the book kind of seal itself up. And if it's, you know, make sure you're getting just the release there, not the whole adhesive strip. Peel and close all the way through. This is another step where it's like, oh, do I have to watch you do all that? But you can forward to the end. It's really just this. This is going to be it. So I won't show all that. But then that's going to be your finished book. And then that's your drum leaf. Okay. So it's pretty simple, and you just need to make one of these. You have enough. Well, I actually started thinking about it. You may not have enough. Somebody asked me if there was enough to make 2 books, and I said yes. And then I started thinking, oops, I might be wrong about that, because it takes 2.5 sheets to make the final book that we're going to make, and that would mean 5 sheets. And then you only have 1 left. So you can't make 2 drum leaves. You would need another piece. So you needed 6 instead of 5. So I miscalculated that. So I apologize for that. But you can make another book. Like I was saying earlier, you can use an 8.5 by 11 sheet. You just use half of that sheet to make this exact size. So that's pretty simple. Like here's an 8.5 by 11 sheet. And you would just, that's the size of the panel. Some kind of gun down there. That's the size of the folio that we used. It's just this and in half, okay? So if you need to do that, you absolutely can. There's no reason. There's nothing wrong with just regular like laser paper, no problem. So if you wanna make 2, you can, but you only need to show me 1. Because that's what we're going to do for the rest of the class, is just have one book. And you know, you can see that rippling that's happening. That is from moisture. That is from the glue. Oh, am I in frame? Yes. Okay. This is from the glue. And so what I'm going to do is, after I peel, I haven't peeled everything, but after I do that, I am going to put a board on this, just gently, not with any heavy weight on it, but just like, so a book would work great for this. Just a board. And a very light weight. This is one of my little baby weights. Just that's truly restricting it so that that rippling will, it's almost like just letting it dry flat so it stays flat. So after I peel all the tape, I'm going to put that back under weight like that to dry, and that'll be the end. And so you guys can just do this. I'll do an assignment on Canvas and modules for, I mean, I'm saying words I kind of don't know, but you know, I'm trying to learn this system. But so I'll put the handout on there. And if you have a problem, if you can't get things, let me know. I can always just text it like I normally would, or email it, or whatever it needs to happen. I'm trying to put things all in one place on Canvas, so that's the plan. So hang in there, guys. We can do this. You can do this and get, almost just as much as you would have gotten out of the class being there in person. I miss you guys already, and I'm sure you miss it too, and seeing each other, camaraderie of that. So, I'll see you in the fall if you're around, and, just hang in there and do the best you can. All right. Okay. Later. Bye.